Hello everyone, welcome to this session by Intellipaat where we are going to cover some of the most commonly asked data analytics interview questions along with their answers. An interesting fact, if there are going to be wars in the future, they are going to revolve around data, not the oil. And it's no joke. Data is becoming hell big of an asset for organizations, government and institutions. If you have data at your disposal, chances are you'll make decisions that can become successful. For that reason itself, there is this substantial need of data professionals who are able to understand the data and gauge insights out of it. I'm talking about data analysts. According to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, in the next 10 years, demand for data analysts is going to grow by 36%. Even if you go ahead and do one simple search about data analyst jobs in India right now, you'll see that there are 1,28,000 plus jobs available. And in the whole world, there are 7 lakh plus jobs available. And all of these jobs are just available on LinkedIn job board. If you consider other job boards, the availability of jobs could compile down to an even bigger number. Now, talking about data analyst salaries, in India, the salary for data analyst ranges between 6.5 lakh to 35 lakh rupees. So basically, the demand is there and salary is there as well. But the thing is, getting into the data analyst jobs would require you to clear the technical interview screening process. And almost 90% of applicants fail at this particular step itself. But don't worry, to help you navigate the data analyst interviews, we have studied more than 500 plus interviews at the top MNCs and even startups and carefully prepared the list of questions that might get asked during the interviews. See, the thing is, you have to be very clear about one thing. In data analytics interviews, you'll not just come across theoretical questions, but you'll be judged on quantitative abilities and problem-solving abilities that you can bring into play to solve data problems. And it's very critical to prepare for all of these kind of questions. And that's exactly what we have focused on in this particular video. Throughout this video, you'll go through multiple questions that will enable you to prepare well for data analytics interviews. So make sure to stay tuned right until the end. Having said that, I would go ahead and transfer the further proceedings to our industry experts to take us through the top data analytics interview questions.
Coming to the first question on these top data analysis interview questions, it is, what are the key differences between data analysis and data mining? Well, data analysis involves the procedure of actually cleaning the data, organizing the data, first procuring it before doing all of these, and of course at the end of it, driving meaningful insights out of it. But data mining is a very different concept, because in data mining, we are very much concerned about finding patterns in the data, finding hidden patterns and to see how better we can use these hidden patterns to drive insights. While data analysis can also be compared to data mining up to one certain extent, but then the procedures that goes into working of data mining is pretty different. Now, data analysis is actually used to produce results which will have a larger impact on the audience, let's say in general, when you directly compare it to data mining. So these two, form to be very vital differences that lie in between data analysis and data mining. Coming to question number 2, it says, what is data validation? Well, data validation is the actual process where we try to see if the data is valid or not, as simple as that. It's not just that, when we're thinking about data and its accuracy, we want to find out if the data is actually accurate and if the data is actually of a high quality as well. First, see if it's coming from a valid source. Second, see how accurate it is. Third, see what the quality of the data is. So to go on to do these, there are multiple processes where, we use to actually go on to perform data validation. Two of the very important processes are data screening and data verification. Data screening involves making use of a lot of models to make sure that our data can be verified in a way that it is accurate, and to make sure that there are no redundancies, no repeatancies, or nothing in the data that will harm the models, let's say. And then we have data verification. What happens in data verification is that, if let's say there is a scenario of redundancy, now if there is a redundancy, what we try to do is we try to see if we can evaluate using multiple steps and to see if the presence or the absence of that particular item in the entire data set is required or not. If it's required, we keep it. If it's not required, it gets removed. As simple as that. So first, screening the data and then performing data validations are a couple of processes that have a huge impact in data validation. Coming to question number 3, it states, what is data analysis in brief? Well, it says in brief, so make sure you do not get carried away with your answer. Data analysis is actually a very structured process where we work with data continuously to perform activities such as data ingestion, data pre-processing, data cleaning, data transformation, data visualization, and eventually we drive insights out of these analytics result or the visualizations themselves. So why is this done? We do it to make sure we can drive revenue or analyze any of the key performance indications of a business. So to begin with, data is collected from multiple sources, right? It can be an on-site server, it can be an off-premise server, a cloud storage network, or wherever it is. Once the data source is grabbed, we have to make sure that we bring in the data into the company architecture. And once this is done, we'll understand that the data is a raw entity, so it needs to be cleaned, it needs to be processed. If there's any missing values, it has to be filled. If there's any entities that's repeating or if it is out of scope, we need to remove it. So after pre-processing, what we'll do is we'll use a couple of models to drive analytics out of it to see that we can create very good reports and to make sure that the data output is converted to a format which is understandable by a technical audience and equivalent non-technical audience as well. Because at the end of the day, a data analysis result can be viewed mostly by board members, stakeholders, and you will basically be explaining this to a non-technical audience. So in that particular case, all of these steps are paramount. Coming to question number 4, it states, how do you know if a data model is performing well or not? Well, this question is very subjective, as you can already tell, because there are many things that involves to check if a data model is performing very well or not. So to find out and assess the accuracy of a data model, we can use a couple of steps. The thing we can do is, a very good design model, as you might already know, will give you very good predictability, right? So you can understand if this is the input, that can be the output, and it will keep doing that on a basis where it will offer you good predictability. That is one. Second thing is that a good model will make sure that no matter what changes you make to the data or what changes you make to the pipeline, the results can be obtained without having to make major changes in the model itself. That is what defines a good model. And then of course, your model needs to have the ability to scale against data in a way where, with one requirement, you might be working with a small amount of data. You might have another requirement where you're working with a huge amount of data as well. So your model needs to cope up. That's point number 3. Point number 4, when you're talking about this, is to make sure that your model's working itself should be easy, right? If it's complicated for you as a data analyst to use, it literally wouldn't make sense to spend a lot of time and effort into it. So having it easily understood among clients and data analysts equally will make sure that both the requirement specification from the client and the performance of the data analyst working with the model will be as high as possible to get the results. So these are some of the points that you have to keep in mind to check if a data model is performing well or not. Coming to question number 5, it says explain data cleaning in brief. One thing you have to know about this question is that it can also be stated as explain data wrangling in brief. So because data cleaning is also called as data wrangling, and as the name suggests, whenever we talk about data cleaning, we try to find ways where we can clean the data, take it from its raw entity into usable information, right? Our end goal is to basically have data with the utmost quality possible. So how do we do it? First, we'll try to see if we can clean the data by removing all the stuff we do not require, right? We call it outliers, but then to remove it, we need to understand what do we need to remove. Do we need to remove one particular row, one column? Do you need to remove the entire data block or what? The second thing is, it's not just about removal, it's about adding certain stuff back in as well. So we can fill certain data in without having to cause any other redundancies or to obstruct anything else in model performance as well. So we remove the data, we can add the data, and in fact, we replace the data with mean or median values as well. Again, this is a very important statistical concept that we'll be discussing in the next couple of questions. But then yes, you can replace existing data with the mean or median values of the data itself. And that in fact makes models very much accurate in a couple of cases. And the last thing is that, we'll make use of concepts called as placeholders, which are used for all the empty spaces in the data too. So these are some of the 4 very important steps, or procedures that's involved in data cleaning. So after understanding data cleaning, here's question number 6. What are some of the problems that a working data analyst might encounter? Well, there are many issues that a data analyst might face when you're working with data, right? Because data itself is an ocean. So working with the ocean is not easy. So the one very important thing we talk about this is the accuracy of the model, right? If there are any issues that causes the biggest problem is going to be the accuracy in model development, and if it is low, it will cause a lot of errors, a lot of mistakes, where at the end of the day performance will fall. The second thing is that the source of the data, if it is not a verified source, it means that your data will be very raw and very shabby. This means that it will require a lot of cleaning, a lot of pre-processing even before the analysis has begun. This will take a lot of time and effort as well. And the third thing is, whenever you're extracting data from multiple sources, or let's say, you're merging data from multiple sources, right? So this will cause again a lot of redundancies with respect to data, and it is very vital that these redundancies are taken care of. So when you're thinking about all these steps, right, it is very vital they go hand in hand, because if you miss one of these steps with data ingestion or data cleaning, the rest of your model will come tumbling down. So these are some of the major problems that the data analysts face in a production environment. Moving on to question number 7, it states, what is data profiling? Well, data profiling, as the name suggests, is a methodology that we make use of to make sure that we have the right steps in place to analyze all of the entries that are present in our data. So it's not just taking a quick overview of what data is present, but rather taking an in-depth look. So what we're trying to do with data profiling is to make sure that we have the ability to see the data in a very high accuracy way, and to make sure that we understand the data better, right? So what are the data types of the data that is present? What's the frequency of occurrence? And a lot of other things as well. So when you're thinking about all of this, it's very important that we profile the data. So with this, we can check out question number 8. Question number 8 asks, what are the scenarios that could cause a model to be retrained? One very important thing about data that you have to know is that data is never a stagnant entity, right? Data keeps changing as business changes. So whenever there's an expansion in the business, it means that there's a day and night difference in the data that the company starts seeing. So what this does is a huge challenge to data analysts, because here we have to analyze if the model itself needs to be retrained or not to work with the new data. If yes, then yes, the model will be retrained, the new data will be shown, the model will be trained, business protocols will be changing, whatever the model sees will change, and of course the output can change drastically as well. So considering all of this, we have one general rule of thumb that we make sure is that whenever we have the models that are retrained, right, we try to align it as much as possible to the new business protocols and whatever is being offered as well. So this and it is very vital to understand the scenarios that happen to cause a model to be retrained as well. Coming to question number 9, it states, what are the prerequisites to become a data analyst? Well, there are many skills that's actually required to be a data analyst, and I'm sure you guys will know most of these skills if you're here at this video, right? So you require programming skills such as JavaScript, ETL, and XML. You need high proficiency with working with databases, especially like MySQL, MongoDB, Oracle SQL, and more. And you need to have the ability, the passion, and the interest to collect and eventually analyze data. You need to figure out how to design databases on your own, and how to perform data wrangling and data mining as well. And once you know how you can go about working with data, what comes next is you having the ability or the experience itself to work with a large amount of data sets in a production environment. This is very important, and all of these skills are the major prerequisites let's say for you guys to become budding data analysts. Well, coming to question number 10, it states, what are the top tools used to perform data analysis? Well, as you might already know, there is multiple tools that can be used in the field of data analysis, right? But then there are really popular ones that get a lot of attention. And these are, Google search operators, also called as GSO. We have RapidMiner, we have Tableau, we have KNN, we have OpenRefine. We have a lot of these other tools which take the center stage as in when we talk about data analysis. So it's very important that you know these tools. Question number 11. It says, what is an outlier? Well, an outlier is basically a value in a data set that we consider to be very much away from the mean of the data, because in two ways, it will hurt the data, because an outlier can cause model accuracy to fall a lot. And of course, at the end of the day, if it's outside whatever we call the normal zone or the useful zone in the data or the inliers, right? What it does is it is redundant, right? So when you're thinking about small amounts of data, it's probably okay. But then when you have large data sets, if it can swing the model accuracy around, big no. The second thing is storage as well. Storage is not really cheap. And when you're thinking about all of these, it's very vital to know what outlier is and how to remove them as well. But then there are two types of outliers you have to know about. One is univariate outliers and then multivariate outliers, and they speak, the names speak for themselves as well, right? Well, so moving on to question number 12, it states, how can we deal with problems that arise when the data flows in from a variety of sources? Well, when your data is coming from a variety of sources, it will come with a variety of problems because data is really shabby, as we've been discussing, and it is very important to handle these as well. So to go on to solve these problems, what we try to do is we try to see if the data is same or if the data is similar, which might cause redundancy. And if it is similar, of course, we can merge it into a single record and reduce the redundancy. We can restructure the entire schema where we are trying to make sure there's good schema integration with the data. And at the end of it, no matter how much cleaning you do, no matter how much pre-processing you do, and how much time you take to do all of these, there will be an entry in a large data set, or there'll be a couple of entries, in fact, that will be hurting model accuracy if you're not careful. So these are some of the problems that arise and how we can deal with them as well. Coming to question number 13, it says, what are some of the popular tools that are used in big data? There's many tools in big data, and again, there are some of these tools which come to the back of the head as soon as we think about big data. So a couple of these tools are Hadoop, we have Spark, we have Scala, we have Hive, we have Flume, Mahout, and as you can see, there's a pattern that exists, right? All of these tools are by Apache. Apache is an open source foundation, and they've been contributing a lot to the world of big data. And it is very important that either you have the experience using these tools or you know what each of these tools do as well. That brings us to the 14th question that states, what is the use of a pivot table? Pivot table, as you might know, as you might have heard it or used it, is one of the most important concepts that exists, in fact, in Microsoft Excel, in my opinion. Because they will give you a very easy to use way where you can view and summarize large data sets without having to put much effort into them. So, most of the operations that we do with pivot tables actually are drag and drop operations, and it really does not require any sort of coding or any sort of programming or really any sort of, let's say a hard amount of effort is not required to create reports and to make them look beautiful itself as well. So in all of these usages, pivot tables are very important, and I'm sure if you're at this video, you guys might have used pivot tables yourselves as well. So coming to question number 15, it states, explain the KNN imputation method in brief. KNN is K nearest neighbors, and it's one of the most important methods that we use to see how we can pick up the nearest neighbors in a nodal arrangement and to see how we can measure the distance metric between each as well. So what we're trying to do here with a KNN imputation is that we try to predict both discrete and continuous attributes that happen to be present in a data set. With this, how can we do it? Well, a distance function is exactly what we use here to find if two data, two nodes or two neighbors are similar or not. If there are similars in more than one attribute, then we're going to use that to perform analysis as well. So to go on to do this in a very structured way, we use a method, and that method itself is called as the KNN imputation method. Moving on to question number 16, it says, what are the top Apache frameworks used in a distributed computing environment, right? So we're living in a world of distributed computing where we can make use of the computing power offered by thousands, if not millions of computers across the globe at a time, right? So when you're sitting with that kind of a power, there are two tools which always come to center stage. This is MapReduce and Hadoop, because these are the top Apache frameworks which are in the limelight, which can handle large amounts of data set very easily. And if it's in a distributed working environment, there are a very less number of tools that get to outshine what MapReduce and Hadoop does. So these are the top Apache frameworks. Coming to question number 17, it states, what is hierarchical clustering? Hierarchical clustering can be, this question can be asked to you in another way. What is HCA? HCA is basically hierarchical cluster analysis, or it can be called as hierarchical clustering as well. So it's basically an algorithm that we use to make sure we can find the easiest ways where we can group similar objects. So once we group this similar object, each group itself will be called as the cluster, and hence the name. So why do we require hierarchical clustering? Well, we require hierarchical clustering because we need to create a set of clusters to show that this data differs from another cluster itself, be it individually, be it cluster wise, or even if they consist of similar entities as well. So, to show the difference that exists in between data, we make use of hierarchical clustering. Moving to question number 18, it states, what are the steps that are involved when working with a data analysis project? Well, again, this question can be answered in multiple ways, but then the foundational concept is the same. So, there are many steps that are involved when you're working on an end-to-end project, especially in the world of data analysis. You'll begin by finding out there is a problem existing, or you'll have a client bring you a problem statement. Once you understand the problem, you'll source the data. Once you get the data, you'll clean it, you'll pre-process it, and you'll explore it to see what the data actually is. Once you understand the data, you'll start creating data models, and you'll create situations where you use the data on a smaller scale to see if you can solve a problem in a simple way. Once you do that, you'll validate it across a bigger data set to see if it works on the complete data set. If it does, you implement it. But then it's not just done with the implementation aspect of it. Once you implement it, you need to verify if you have solved the problem or not. And that is the last important step. So, based on how much the interviewer is asking you to stress on the answer, make sure to expand on it. Keep it concise. Don't get lost in each of these steps, because I can talk about each of these steps for 20 minutes right now, but then it really wouldn't add a lot of value in an interview scenario, right? So, read the room, read the interviewer, understand what he or she is expecting, and deliver the answer in that way. So with this, we come to the 19th question that states, can you name some of the statistical methodologies used by data analysts? Well, again, you can name a lot of methodologies used by data analysts, but try to keep your answer concise, right? So name 4 or maximum 5, in my opinion. That should be very useful. See, we have Markov process, we have cluster analysis, we have imputation methods, we have imputation technologies, we have the Bayesian methodologies, we have rank statistics, and we have a lot of other statistical techniques that are very useful. In fact, I can say they are foundational in many cases when you're working in the case of data analysis as well. So for all of these techniques that exist, each of these have their own niche purposes, and they're very effective at doing what they state. So when you ask this question, make sure to mention this. Coming to the next question, which is the 20th question, it states, what is time series analysis, or also called as TSA for short? Well, time series analysis is used to perform, trend analytics. We try to see how the data changes with respect to time. And it's not just how the data changes with time. Here, what we're trying to analyze is for a fact that the presence of data at particular intervals of time, and seeing the presence of data and its response and its behavior of how actually it drives the data set. So if you have a data that does this at this point of time, and you want to understand why it does that, or you want to understand what it does because of it changing its state or changing its data at that particular point in time, then TSA is very effective to use. So moving on to the 21st question, it's actually a follow-up to the 20th question. It states, where is TSA used, right? So TSA has a lot of usage when you think about it in a lot of different domains. So make sure to at least mention 3 or 4, but then I have given you more out here so that it'll help you remember, right? So TSA is used in statistics, in the field of signal processing, econometrics, weather forecasting, earthquake prediction, astronomy, and even applied sciences as well. There's a very good chance the interviewer will not ask you how it is used, but probably, give you a situation and ask you to think about it and tell if you can, provide a solution there as well. But then these are some of the most important places where time series analysis adds a lot of value. So when you ask this question, make sure to mention this. Moving to question number 22, it states, what are some of the properties of clustering algorithms, right? Well, clustering algorithm, wherever you have it implemented, will have a lot of properties, but then these are the main ones. So you have the flat or the hierarchical property, it can be iterative, it's going to be disjunctive, and a lot more. So when you're thinking about clustering algorithms, do talk about how these foundational concepts of it being flat or hierarchical, it being iterative to make sure that you arrive at the solution, or it being disjunctive, which definitely defines how clustering algorithms work effectively to split out data into clusters and make use of it as well. Coming on to question number 23, it states, what is collaborative filtering? Well, collaborative filtering is a very important concept. It's an algorithm which is widely used in the field of data analytics to create recommendation systems. So recommendation systems is used to understand the behavioral data of a customer, or in fact to understand what the data is doing and why it is doing something the way it is doing as well. So when you can think about it, when you're shopping on an e-commerce site, maybe like Amazon or Flipkart or something, you will be shown recommendations, right? So users who bought this also bought this. So when you think about that, that's a recommendation given to you. And in fact, collaborative filtering is used just for this purpose as well. So it'll be using a lot of data. It'll be using cookies data, browser history, and there are very complex methodologies and very complex models and algorithms put into place to recommend the best products out to you. And the working of that is achieved through collaborative filtering. Coming to question number 24, it says, what are the types of hypothesis testing used today? There's three main types of hypothesis testing which gets the center stage again, right? So in fact, there's many types of hypothesis testing, but these are the important ones. The first will always be ANOVA, or what we call as analysis of variance, because here we try to perform analysis in between the mean values of multiple groups to see how data is changing. The second thing we call as the t-test. The t-test is actually used wherever standard deviation is unknown to us, and let's say the sample size is pretty less as well. Again, we'll have another question discussing about t-test. And the next thing is the chi-square test, or also called as the chi-square test. You can pronounce it both ways. So what we do with the chi-square test is that we try to use hypothesis testing here to find if there is a requirement, find what's the association of the categorical variables in a sample, and to see how best we can arrive at the goal of our model as well. So when you're thinking about hypothesis testing, make sure to talk about 3 or let's say even 4 types of testing, and quickly briefly talk about what they do as well. Coming to question number 25, it says, what are some of the data validation methodologies used in data analysis? Well, there's many data validation techniques as we've been discussing for a while now, and these 4 are very important. The first thing is field level validation. Field level validation is we try to validate every single field where data is present to make sure that there is no errors, let's say because a user might have entered it wrong, and any other redundancy which would have caused the wrong data to be in the wrong place as well. So form level validation is done when the user works with the form, but then before saving the information, if there's any changes that's been made, we need to keep a track of that as well. And then we have data saving validation. Data saving validation will take place when the file, let's say, or even the database record is being saved as well. So whenever it's being saved, there's a change of state. To analyze that, we perform this validation. And then we have the search criteria validation. Here we're trying to see if the valid results can be returned or not whenever the user asks for it, or whenever the user is going through the data set, summarizing it, or even driving results out of it as well. So these are some of the very important data validation methodologies that are widely used by data analysts across the globe. Coming to question number 26, it states, what is K-means algorithm? K-means algorithm is a very popular algorithm that we use to cluster data into multiple data sets, or in fact cluster data into multiple clusters as well. So each of these clusters will consist of similar data, and the name K-means comes from K actually being the number of clusters that we required. If K is equal to 5, it means that our K-means algorithm is going to divide the data set into 5 different clusters. So to use this, you will require a good amount of experience. It's very simple to use though, but then to achieve really effective results, it requires experience to work with K-means, and of course to know how many clusters you want. And since you'll be working with the data which is unsupervised in nature, you will not have any sort of labels that guide and show what the data is as well. So, working with K-means can get finicky at times, but then it's really fun and it's really effective too. Coming to question number 27, it states, what is the difference between the concepts of recall and true positive rate? Well, this is a very tricky question. I'll tell you why. Because recall and true positive rates are literally the same thing. So recall and true positive rates are exactly the same. And whenever we try to think about the formula of either recall or true positive rate, right, it's basically true positive divided by the true positive value and the probability of the false negative value too. So it's TP divided by TP plus FN. It's the actual formula for recall. And it's a very simple question with a very straightforward answer. Coming to question number 28, it's what are the ideal situations in which a t-test or a z-test can be used? We have one very simple practice that we follow that's become standardized in fact right now. A t-test will be used if your sample size is less than 30, and a z-test will be used if your sample size exceeds 30 in many cases. So a pretty neat trick to remember this is that t is less than z, so t can be used whenever you use a sample size less than 30. Z is at the end of the alphabet spectrum, and it means that your data is exceeding certain cases, right? So that's a pretty simple way in case if you have not had any experiences working with z-test and the t-test as well. Coming to the 29th question, it states, why is naive bias called as naive? Well, whenever we think about naive bias, right, we don't know why it might be called naive, because this is a very tricky question. It gets asked a lot just to see if you actually know the answer or not. Well, it's called naive because it actually makes the general assumptions that everything present in your data is important and it is independent of each other. Thinking this always as a human being, it can be naive because your data is different. It is sometimes dependent on each other. It will not always be independent. Not all the data is important as well, right? So to know all of this, your model will not understand that. It will just say everything is important and everything is independent. So this is not true. It will not hold in a real world scenario, and that is the reason we call naive bias as naive bias. Coming to the 30th question, it states, what is the simple difference between standardized and unstandardized coefficients? As the name suggests, whenever we talk about standardized coefficients, we're trying to interpret all the results based on the standard deviation values. When it's unstandardized, it means that we're trying to use the actual value of the data rather than the standard deviation results. So if you're considering the standard deviation values, it's the standardized coefficients. If you're considering the actual data that is present and not the standard deviation value, then it's unstandardized. Pretty simple question, pretty straightforward answer. Coming to the 31st question, it says, how are outliers detected, right? There are many methodologies that we make use of whenever we are detecting outliers. It is very important to remove them in most of the cases. But then, out of all these methods that exist, we have two very important methods. One's the standard deviation method. The other one is the box plot method. In the standard deviation method, what we try to do is the value itself will actually be considered as an outlier if the value is either lower or higher than 3 standard deviations from the mean value. So we'll find the mean value, you'll get to know the standard deviation. If the value is 3 times higher or lower than the standard deviation value, it means that it deviates too much from the data and that it is an outlier. And then we have the box plot model. Box plot model is the most popular way of how you can find out outliers, because here we try to find the interquartile range, or what we call as the IQR. And if your data is to be considered as an outlier, it means it has to be either 1.5 times more or 1.5 times less than the mean in the interquartile range. If that's the case, then of course your data is considered as an outlier. Coming to question number 32, which states, why is KNN preferred when determining missing numbers in data? KNN, as we've already discussed, it's called K nearest neighbors algorithm. It's a very famous one that's used a lot. And we now know why it's called that, but why is it used when you're determining missing numbers? It's because it has the capability to, approximate a value based on other values that are present very close to it as well. It can easily approximate these values, and hence it finds a very important place in the world of determining missing numbers present in our data as well. So coming to question number 33, it states, how can one handle suspicious or missing data in a data set while performing analysis? You can think about this in a lot of ways, because when you're thinking about any sort of data, there will be discrepancies in it. So to handle all of these, what we try to do is we create validation reports where we discuss the data in detail to make sure that, most of it is right at least. And then we escalate the data or this suspicion to our superiors or experienced data analysts to have a look at it and then take a call about it. So we try to replace the data which might be old and invalid as well. We try to make it valid. We try to put in the latest up-to-date data to see if it fixes it, and we can go on to use the many strategies that we have in the world of data analysis to find the missing values, use approximation, to put in the values to see what fits best to perform analysis, trial and error, and whatever is required to handle, either missing data or suspicious data as well. Coming to the 34th question, it states, what is the simple difference between PCA and FA? PCA stands for Principal Component Analysis and FA stands for Factor Analysis. Among all the many differences that lie in between them, one major difference between principal component analysis and the factor analysis is the fact that factor analysis is actually used to specify and work with variance that exists in between the variables, right? So whenever we're working with the major difference, what we're trying to do with PCA is we're trying to use the variance that exists in between variables, but then with PCA, it's a little different. With PCA, what we try to do is we try to explain the covariance that exists between the components. So factor analysis deals with variance, principal component analysis deals with covariance. This is probably the biggest difference that lies in between principal component analysis and factor analysis. Now, moving on to the 35th question, it says, how is it beneficial to make use of version controlling? Version controlling is very, very, very important, and it provides you a lot of advantages, right? One thing is that it will give you a structured pipeline where you can compare all the files, identify a lot of differences, merge if any changes are done in a very structured and a convenient way where you can track it as well. Because here you can track the life cycle of any sort of application building with every stage of its build, be it development, be it production, be it testing, be it verification. You can actually track all of these too. And then when you're thinking about how it will bring together a good way to establish, let's say a collaborative work culture in the company, then yes, a version controlling system will do just that. And then when you're thinking about making sure that with every release of your version, the security of your code, the safety of it, the variety of it, and the veracity of it as well, right? So to keep it secure, keep it safe, a version controlling system will definitely help. Coming to the 36th question, it states, what are the future trends in data analysis? Well, if you ask this question, what the interviewer here is trying to do is he or she is trying to assess your grip on the subject and how much research have you actually done into the future of data analysis, right? So to answer this, make sure you can state a good number of facts and respective validation for those facts, of course, for all the sources that you have used. To add a lot of positivity to your candidature, because at the end of the day, they're trying to understand how in depth experience you might have in data analysis, or how in depth of a passion do you have for data analysis as well. Try to explain how data analysis will have a huge impact on businesses today. In fact, talk about how it is already revolutionizing the world around us, how it will revolutionize the future trends as well, and how it is showing nothing but immense potential too. If you have facts, if you have statistics, if you have experience, if you have to talk about new tools, new techniques, new ways that data analysis will help, please do talk about all of these. Coming to question number 37, it states, why are you applying for the data analyst role in our company? Well, with this question, the interviewer wants you to convince them basically regarding why you think you are proficient in the subject, how well can you handle data analysis, how well can you work in a production environment, how best can you be fit as a team player, all of these things as well. So to answer this in a very, very, nice way, first thing you have to do is you need to know the job description in detail. You need to know what they're expecting of you to see if you can deliver that or not. Because once you understand the details of what the company does, what the job description is, what your team does, where you will be fit into the organization, you will of course find the best way to understand why you need to do it. You might have a passion for data analyst, you might have a genuine interest to build your career there. Let's say you have a very keen interest on working with data and to solve problems using that too. Well, then you can have multiple reasons, and there is no one answer for all the questions here. So this question completely depends on you, but then you can use this as a guide to go on to answer it. Coming to the 38th question, it states, can you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 depending on your proficiency in data analysis? This is another question the interviewer will usually ask to see how confident you are when you're sitting at the interview, how much you know about the subject, and how spontaneous can you be whenever you ask questions, right? So one very important thing that you need to understand here is that answer it honestly. Do not be over optimistic, right? So if you think you on a scale of 1 to 10 you are at a 7, please make sure not to say 9.5 or 10, because if you're answering it that way, then you might be asked very, very difficult questions or advanced questions which might be over the scope of your expertise, which might put the wrong image into the interviewer's head, and you might lose out on the candidature as well. So to be as honest as possible, talk about what you've done and talk about why you rate yourself at that particular scale as well. Coming to question number 39, it states, has your college degree helped you with data analysis anyway? Well, talk about the latest program that you completed in college, right? So firstly start your answer with this. Talk about if your college actually helped you with data analysis anyway. Don't say no if you haven't had any experiences there, because see, if you are in fact enrolled in a college degree, you will have access to a lot of data that in fact you could have used to perform data analysis as well. So talk about if you've been keen to do it, if you have done anything to the data, anything with respect to data analysis in the past, or let's say if you have not done any of these, right? Talk about the experience that the entire college degree program gave you and how you think it built you in a way where you can be a good fit into data analysis, into the entire field and the organization that you're applying as far as well. So talk about how it molded you into being the data analyst enthusiast that you are today. Coming to the 40th question, it states, what is your plan after joining for this data analyst role? So again, do not be carried away by this question. It is very, very easy to get carried away here, and you can talk about it for a lot of minutes. But then keep it as concise as possible. This is my advice to you, because you can talk about a lot of things here, but start out with talking about a plan on how you can begin understanding the data analysis structure set that is already set up in the company, how you think you will be a good fit there, how you plan on either seeing if the actual existing model might need some betterment or not. But at the end of the day, don't just say that you're gonna barge in and do a lot of changes in a short amount of time. Keep your answer structured. Keep your answer thinking in consideration that you'll be going into a production environment, and it's always vital if you can highlight how better you can make the product, the company, the brand, or whatever it is, with you being there as well. So talk about the expertise that you bring to the table and how you think that might help the organization too. Coming to the 41st question, it states, what are the disadvantages of data analytics? So even though the advantages are huge, right? There are one or two disadvantages that you will have to talk about. And if you do not know this, and it is very important that you know this as well, right? See, data analytics can actually cause a breach into the customer privacy and all of their information as well, right? So it's very vital to know where you're getting the data from. You might be thinking about customer transactions, purchases, subscriptions, and you will have a lot of access into what this customer is doing as well. In that particular case, make sure that you do not cause any sort of breaches in customer privacy. And then when you're thinking about another very important disadvantage as a learner, is that some of these tools are really complex to use and you will require training to go on to use it as well. So it's not as easy as you download the tool, install it, and begin working with it. You will require a good amount of structured training and to work with it efficiently as well. And one of the other things is that it'll take a lot of skill, it'll take a lot of expertise, it'll take a lot of hands-on experience to go on to select the right tool itself, first of all. To find the right tool to use it and to use it effectively, it's going to take a lot of time, it's going to take some money, and of course it's going to take the biggest asset of the company is the client's time too. So in that particular case, even though these are not huge disadvantages, the privacy thing is definitely one disadvantage to consider. Complexity of the tools are important, and of course the requirement for a lot of skills can get overwhelming for beginners as well. So as an add-up question to that, you might be asked, what skills should a successful data analyst possess? Well, this is basically a descriptive question, because here the interviewer wants to understand how your analytical skills are and how your thinking skills are, right? See, there are many, many, many tools and skills that a data analyst must have. Think about programming languages, right? You'll require expertise in Python, you'll require expertise in R, SAS, concepts of probability, details of statistics, regression, correlation, and many, many, many other skills that a good data analyst should possess. How much of experience should he or she possess? Well, that depends on how long this person has been into data analysis, right? But then it is vital that you know what skills are required. What skills are used by professional data analysts. You might have some experts or let's say famous data analysts out there that you might be looking up to. So it's very vital you to understand all of that and answer this question in an effective way as well. Coming to the 43rd question, it states, why do you think that you are the right fit for this data analyst role? Again, if you're being asked this question, it means that the interviewer wants to understand if you are the right fit for the job description, number one. Number two, why do you think data analysis is for you? And number three, what knowledge do you have in data analysis to actually fit into their organization well? So, one thing again, very important note is that do not get carried away, because you can answer this for 20-25 minutes straight, but keep it very small, keep it concise, keep it detailed, and just talk about your passion, talk about your interest, talk about your goals, and how much these goals and passions will match the company's substructure and their goals as well. See, every company will have a vision and a mission, and if you can commit to the vision and the mission of that company and better either the and better the product they deliver or better the brand itself, then of course you will be the right fit for the table, right? So taking a product from one place into another place, which is definitely better, and you can prove it with numbers. In the case of data analysis, it is very important you know how you are the right fit for the role as well. Question number 44. It states, can you please talk about your past data analysis work? Well, you might be asked this even though you're a fresher. You might be asked this even if you're an experienced candidate as well. If you are a fresher, then do talk about how you've either figured out there are problems that exist in the world of data analytics, or so if you're a fresher, do talk about how you might have performed very simple analytics as well, right? So think about how many people could have how many guests that come into your place. Find a structured way on calculating that and why you think that's the case. Talk about how many people buy a certain product in your supermarket. There can be many things that you might not have officially done on paper, but your brain would have analyzed it, right? Talk about that. But then if you actually have a certification program, you would have worked on, in fact, a good certification program, you would have worked on a lot of industry level projects as well, use cases too. Talk about that. And of course, if you're an experienced person attending a data analysis interview, talk about your previous company, talk about what you did to the company, what value you added, what problems you solved, and how better was the team when you left, compared to when you were joining as well, right? So talk about a lot of these insights, talk about your debating skills, talk about how you can think out of the box, how good you are with your statistical skills, and of course, how much of a team player you were in the past, and how that has continued as well. So let's talk about a behavioral question now. Question number 45 states, can you please explain how would you estimate the number of visitors to the Taj Mahal in November of 2019? Well, this question does not expect you to say the exact number of what number of visitors Taj Mahal got in November in 2019, but then here people are trying to see your thought process without you making use of a data set, without you making use of a computer, to see how you would approach the problem, right? So here's a very good template that you can use. First, you would begin by gathering some data, right? So to do that, you will have to understand a lot of things. You will need to know the population of Agra, where the Taj Mahal is located, how people can move in and out of Agra, how convenient is it, and a lot more. The next thing we'll be looking at is the number of tourists that come to Agra, right? And how popular is Taj Mahal itself in Agra. So with all of these, you will find the average stay of these tourists that come. You can analyze it in detail. For example, the age of the people who come, the gender, the annual income that they have, the number of vacation days that they take, the number of bank holidays that exist in India, and all of that. The number of days Taj Mahal is closed, the number of days it's open, the number of days it records the highest number of visits, and all of these. Once you have gathered all of these data, you will go on to perform statistical analysis on it to understand how many visitors it has got as well. And if you want to perform even advanced analysis, you can go to the local tourist offices to gather all sorts of data, process it on your own, and eventually use it to verify if your model is right or not as well. So this is a classic behavioral question, and it's not just the Taj Mahal, it's not just the date. This question can be asked in many different ways. For example, how many cars were sold in India in, let's say, the last month or the last year as well. So that's another very common question that's asked. And whenever you ask this, make sure to take this kind of an approach, use the template, and think about it for a second. Take 1 or 2 minutes to think about it. There is no hurry when you're answering this question. Coming to question number 46, it says, do you have any experience working in the same industry as ours before? Well, as you might already know it, a data analyst will fit into a lot of domains, right? Even in the field of medicine, even in the field of social media, be it whatever it is. A data analyst is required if there's a business, as simple as that. So if you've worked in the same industry as the company that you're applying for now, do talk about how you've used your skills to polish yourself into that industry and how best you brought yourself out of it. If you do not have worked in the same experiences, don't just say no. Talk about what you think are the skills that are needed for this industry and how you're working on yourself to come to that particular spot as well, right? So it's very important that you talk about how you're building yourself towards working in this industry, your interests, your passions, and if you have had experience, of course, do talk about that and thoroughly explain it. And thoroughly explain all of the skills that you might have used, techniques, tools, and how you've benefited the past company that exists in the same industry as well. Coming to question number 47, it says, how good are you in explaining technical content to a non technical audience with respect to data analysis? See, your ability to explain a technical content to a non-technical audience has to be one of the most important things that you'll do as a data analyst, because your communication skills are very, very, very vital. It's not just delivering technical content, it's your ability to have patience, it's your ability to break complex things into simpler, it is your ability to break up complex things into simpler things where you can explain it to an audience who might be your board members, stakeholders, or some other non-technical audience as well. So if you've had any experiences of situations where you had to explain technical concepts and break it out to a non-technical audience, make sure to talk about that. Talk about how well versed you are, how effective that you have been in delivering content before as well. So this question again is a question where I cannot give you one answer for each and every one of you, but then you yourself give it a thought for 15-20 minutes and you will get the best way on how you can answer it. Coming to question number 48, it says, what tools do you prefer to use in various phases of development? Again, this is a question that's asked to check what all the tools that you have used, how you've used it, and how best do you think a tool will fit into that particular task as well. So if you have used any or all of the tools that's involved in data analysis, talk about it. Talk about how comfortable you were in using these tools and talk about how they're popular as well. See, some of the tools that we discussed in the questions are very, very popular, right? Talk about how they are popular and why they are popular too. So this will add a lot of value to your candidature. And coming to the 49th question, it says, which step of a data analysis project do you like the most? Well, it's very, very common to have a liking towards one or two tools in the entire process of data analysis, right? See, a data analysis is a vast field. You just cannot have one particular tool where you will do everything with that tool. So you will have multiple tools to do it, and you will have a liking to one particular tool. You might not like the other tools as well, right? So when you're thinking of the entire analytics cycle, it is always vital that you do not talk negatively about any of these tools, because those tools are put into place to do their tasks and they have been doing it well. If you do not like it, well, okay, you do not like it, we understand that, but do talk about what best the tool can do, how it can improve itself to probably making yourself be inclined towards that, or what are the steps that you think can help make the tools better in fact as well. But understand this, when you're answering this question, know that it is okay to have a favorite tool. Know that it is okay to put in more time into one particular tool, because it's your career, it's your interest, it's your liking, and if you think you can be very efficient at using that tool effectively, then be it. It is okay. And then coming to the last question on these top data analyst interview questions and answers set, it states, have you earned any sort of certification to improve your learning and implementation process, right? See, a good certification program, what it does for you, it's going to give you thorough knowledge, in-depth expertise from top trainers across the globe. It's going to give you a certificate. It's going to give you exposure to potential hirers. It's going to do a lot for you. So if you are involved in a very complex program that has the capability to take you from a beginner all the way to an advanced data analyst, it means it's adding a lot of value to your life. But how should you answer this when you ask this in an interview? See, one thing is that if you have a certification, right, it shows the interviewer that you have interest in advancing your career in this particular field. It shows that it shows that you have strong aspiration to learn, because you've put in your time, you've put in efforts, you've put in money, and all of these, and dedicated it to the world of data analysis, right? So if you're doing all of this, it always adds value to the interviewer as well. And then when you're thinking about how effective learning that you have put into place, see, many certification programs will give you all the theoretical knowledge that exists, but only the good ones will give you really good industry level projects and case studies to work with. So if you have had the experience to actually crack these industry level problems, it means that you have the capability to learn things on your own and be a player in a productive environment as well. So that itself is going to portray a lot of value of you being certified in that domain. And now if you have more than one certification, just go on to list the certifications of of what you have done as well. But instead of stating a lot about what you have done, the most value that can be added to your application is to state how you have used this certification, right? So you could have learned a lot of things, but if you have not used that, it will not add any value, right? So what problems have you solved? The entire world of IT came into place because we have problems and we realized we can use computers to solve them. So, to how best of your capability and potential have you made use of these certification programs to solve problems that are there, or how do you plan to solve them if you haven't done any as well? Talk about how helpful it's been to you, your career, and how much value it added to your life experiences, to your learning and interests towards data analysis as well.